Back to our weekly Twitter space. This time we have my very good friend Sean from Hyperbridge and Michael, who's currently frozen. I don't know if it's cold where he is or he's just frozen.
Absolutely cooked. No, I think his
Yeah,
internet is just bad. Michael, let us know if you can hear us in the chats, in the private chats.
yeah. It's a funny way of like as if it's just like typing, but it's just frozen.
Yeah, just raptured.
Yeah. But
Oh
while,
man.
while we're waiting for Michael, I'm sure everybody knows about Hyperbridge, what it is, but I'll let Sean like give a little intro on what is Hyperbridge, what's Sean's background, and yeah, let's hear that.
Yeah, for sure. Once again, always great to be here. My name is Sean Malege, and I'm the co-founder of Hyperbridge. Hyperbridge is a verifiable multi-chain bridge. Essentially, a lot of the existing bridges in the Web3 space use multi-sigs and off-chain third parties to authenticate cross-chain messages where Hyperbridge actually verifies, finality proofs and all kinds of proofs of cross-chain messages on chain. So that's a little bit about Hyperbridge, just a little bit about myself. Of course, happy to talk more as we go along in the call.
Yeah, I think Michael's unfrozen now, so we'll, we'll get Michael back in.
Welcome
We were
back.
like just frozen in this very weird position where I wasn't sure if you're typing or just actually froze.
I I cancelled my VPN just as you went live, and so it was taking time to reconnect just to make sure that I had a good connection.
Right, okay,
Back.
we just went through the introduction with Sean. Michael, do you want to just talk about Mandala Chain and yourself as well?
Awesome. Yeah. So my name is Michael. I'm here every week with Pac-Man every Wednesday. I'm the founder of Republic Labs. We're one of a couple of different entities that are behind the Mandala Chain project. And so we also run one of the largest blockchain media and research hubs out of Southeast Asia. We have on our social network branding, we've got something like 180 odd thousand people in our community across our socials. And so, yeah, we do have a quite a large like blockchain agnostic community. They're not necessarily like Mandala chain people. They're blockchain everything, not even necessarily Polkadot specific. We've got, a lot of Bitcoin maxis, a lot of Ethereum people, a lot of Solana people, but we're trying to steer them towards the ethos of what we believe in. So yeah, we're building Mandala Chain and one of the core contributors, and we're very excited to talk to our friends over at Hyperbridge tonight.
The one thing, obviously, we're all as everybody know, I'm the co-founder of Kylix Finance, and we're all building in Polkadot. So I want to see like Sean's perspective because like Sean's like with developer background, technical background. What do you think of potential of building in Polkadot, and like the benefits of being in the ecosystem of Polkadot compared to something like Sui or Solana?
Yeah, no, like I've been having this conversation a lot recently, and I always come back to like the technical advantages of the Polkadot tech stack. I know that crypto exists in this sort of hyper reality that is mediated by price, and anything that its price isn't, trending upwards is sort of seen as a failure or potentially a dead product. But I think that's not been the case with Polkadot, right? Like Polkadot's all-time highs came before it actually rolled out major upgrades to its technology platform. Parachains, most recently async backing, bridges going live, now elastic scaling. I tweeted something like very recently that just imagine being bearish on Polkadot when, its best days are literally ahead of it, right? Its best days for developers, its best days for users, and the kinds of, I would say, blockchain user experiences that can now happen because of all of this technical innovation. Um, I think it's impossible to be bearish, honestly. And I know a lot of people don't care about these things. They're like, when's the number going to go up? I think that the way that we win is the final sort of thing that's going to be delivered this year, which is the hub, which will reduce the barrier to entry for Polkadot developers and Polkadot teams and applications. Previously you had to maintain a power chain and you had to hire literally the best developers in the space. I'm going to be very frank with you. Building a power chain means you have to hire the best Rust developers in the space who are able to like understand and manage, a full blockchain, which is like a very complex piece of infrastructure, right? And so this is very, very like limiting for teams that especially cannot afford to shell out, huge amounts of cash to these kinds of people. Um, and so having, smart contracts which are more, I want to say, accessible to, the common person. Solidity developers are now basically everywhere. You can hire them
Yeah.
off of Fiverr. You can hire them, you can have AI write your Solidity contracts for you. This, I think, will scale Polkadot to more developers, which will then, of course, lead to more products. And inevitably, this reconciliation and actually the technology speaks for itself, right? The technology platform is there. I can support this wide variety of use cases and wide variety of user experiences. So that's kind of my own perspective on things. I remain fundamentally bullish, unfortunately, for the bears. Um, and I think the hub is really going to be that thing that sparks this like singularity, right? That sparks this like expansion of Polkadot mindshare. So, if I were you, I'd be buying Dot right now. I'd say that Dot is like hyper cheap right now.
Yeah. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, just to drill down on that a little bit, because I know that we've got a lot of people who'll be listening that are not from the dot ecosystem. So for those who probably are aware, like Polkadot started out as this network of blockchains, which was different from the Ethereum ecosystem, which was this kind of monolithic L1 that has kind of changed to look a lot more like Polkadot, ironically. And now Polkadot itself is kind of not pivoting at all, but just adding the feature of the Polkadot hub where people will be able to build on Polkadot as opposed to actually having to spin up their own blockchain. And it will be EVM compatible, Solidity contract compatible. So like I think that the first thing that the Polkadot ecosystem should be doing is knocking on like Uniswap store. And I know that we've got already great applications in our ecosystem. We've already got like really great DeFi platforms like Hydration, but to have like recognized brand names, brand name applications that are now compatible with that ecosystem, we should show them that their tech can work inside the Polkadot ecosystem. Um, but anyway, that's the backstory. The reason why we ended up building in Polkadot is because I am very lucky that for a living I get to research all blockchain ecosystems, and I'm quite familiar with most of them. I've worked with a lot of their foundations and built like stuff with advertised for a lot of their teams, created content for a lot of different ecosystems. And so when the time came to deploy our own contract and our own project, yeah, Polkadot's what we wanted to build for all the reasons that Sean just said. Like, yeah, absolute, like, complete decentralization and pure technology in an ecosystem that's compatible. So we're fans. If you haven't,
Yeah,
if you
I
haven't
think
noticed.
Sean's right about, a lot of people just measure the success by the token price. And, because the token price is already was quite high before the parachange launched. And unfortunately, the timing couldn't have been much worse because it was just at the start of the bear market. So, if this was, for example, a parachange would have launched, let's say, March or April 2021, then it would have been a completely different story. And I'm one of them, like people with a PTSD from all of this, because, I was heavily bullish on this as well myself. But now, going forward, I think Kusamarian posted something about a teaser. Maybe there will be a jam token. So, what do you think about it? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to rule this out entirely. I think that Gav likes to have canary networks, right? And this Jam token might be a sort of canary network for Jam. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's important to consolidate efforts. A new token would only continue to fragment the Polkadot ecosystem, right? Because a lot of the new Jam community will come from the existing, unfortunately, Polkadot ecosystem, and this only destroys, the little that we are working with. So I would argue against a Jam token and maybe a refurbishment of Kusama to this Canary Jam network. And against the fragmentation of the community, the developers, the businesses, even entire nation states that may want to build on Polkadot, that are now caught between Jam and Polkadot, right?
Yeah.
That would be my argument.
That's actually quite a good point, because if we can bring Kusama back into play and, like, merge Jam and KSM token all together, then that brings, that kind of stops bringing a new token, and people will kind of lose faith in Polkadot, thinking like everything's moving to Jam now. So Dot is already, struggling. So, Michael, what do you think?
Um, I I said this from the day that he announced Jam, that if we were going to do this, that it should be a full rebrand. Um, so whether or not you want to actually let go of the Polkadot IP or not, that's very debatable. Whether or not it's we've already got this long history of brand familiarity, whether there's more upside to actually trying to rebrand or not. Um, I think if it was going to happen, we'd have to be cognizant of the idea that it would cannibalize the dot token, and a lot of the value, like dot, would drop out of the top whatever it is, top 25, and you'd be doing that on the trade off that the hope that the jam token would be like a top 10 types of a token. So as long as everyone's aware of what we would be doing, maybe there's a conversation to be had, but it wouldn't just be like, okay, we're now going to have a dot token and a jam token and they're both going to be of equal value. It would definitely be to the detriment of the dot token. So that's just the trade-off that the community would have to be aware of, that the dot token would go down, but is that worth it if the jam token then becomes a top 10, top 6, top 5 protocol? We need to see how this looks like, because I don't think jam ships anytime soon. So we've got lots of time to talk about this, but pros and cons in many different directions. But we need to be aware that there is no free lunch. You don't just get to spin up a new token and they both keep their value.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say as well. So you can't just launch a new token and expect it to do well, when especially the current token is not doing very well. So a lot has to change for the dot itself before they can talk about tokenomics and distribution and everything for the new token. And a
And
lot
I,
of sorry, but just gonna finish up saying, like, for example, the OpenGov, the trade. A lot of people have this, like, the voting power, and the token. It's not just the price. So all of that has to be kind of considered before we spin up a new token.
Yeah, I was actually also going to add a bit more to this, is that you know, if we let go of the dot token and then we move our attention to this new jam token, it's still unfortunately the case that both technologies require high economic security. So this fragmentation only makes the economic security for both of them worse, like markedly worse. I can tell you for sure that investors are not going to be happy that there's this brand new token for a brand new platform that actually is an evolution of the previous platform, right?
Yeah.
This will definitely crash the economic security of that alone. And it remains to be seen if the Jam token can actually reach the same levels of not even go beyond it, right? Just reach the same levels of the economic security that the Polkadot token provided.
Yeah.
If the motivation, I think you're right, Sean. And I think if the motivation for it is that you want to highlight the technology that Jam is, then it should just be a rebrand. Kind of like what Polygon did after Matic,
Or
kind of what
Sonic, yeah.
Phantom has
Yeah.
done after Sonic. Yeah. So if that's the motivation and that's the sole motivation, it's like you want to highlight Jam, rebrand. But
Yeah.
yeah, there doesn't necessarily need to be a secondary token for sure.
Talking about token, what do you think about the biggest ever proposal from the OpenGov, 5 million dots? We can't talk about the elephant in the room.
I mean, I have thoughts on this for sure. I have thoughts on this. Look, I was one of the first people to actually propose an incentives, like a pure incentive spend, right? So technically, we are the forerunners of this proposal. And our argument was very simple, which is that, look, other ecosystems already spend ridiculous amounts on incentives. I give you the most ridiculous right now in the room, the Unichain incentives, which is around $120 million in Uni tokens to be deployed on essentially applications that are deployed to Unichain, right, as incentives for DeFi, DEXs and lending and all these different things. So this is how these ecosystems bootstrap their DeFi ecosystems. Ethereum didn't need incentives because DeFi was invented on Ethereum, but everyone after that had to do this bootstrapping process where, DeFi is much more efficient when there's lots of liquidity, but liquidity is not going to come if there's no reason for them to come, right? There's, of course, no users for them to come. So first you have to give them those tokens for free, then users see that there's liquidity, then it's now actually useful, and then you solve this cold start problem, right? So, unfortunately, we've not spent a lot on incentives. We've spent on a few things, loans to Bifrost, I think loans to hydration as well. but there's never been an incentive spend since, except the first one that we did with Hyperbridge, which is incentives for the dot token. And so I think we actually need more of these types of spends if we want to gain any DeFi mindshare, which is really the biggest driver of use cases and transactions and real economic value in the real world for blockchains today.
Yeah. And shout out to Polka World for just flipping the vote in the last minute. If they hadn't, it would have been Nate. So it's great that they came through and explained the reasons as well. Michael, what do you think? Have you been following this whole thing?
I've been following it with popcorn in hand. Yeah, no, I am very similar. Like, I think the first initial reaction I had when I saw the number, I was like, "Ooh, that's bold," because it is such a sizable number for a team that also like isn't necessarily deploying those tokens on like a Polkadot hub, say per se. But after thinking about it for about 47 seconds, I came to the same conclusion as Sean as well, that this is like an essential thing that we need to bring to the ecosystem. And like, I actually look at some of the biggest adoption points that I was involved in. Like the biggest airdrop I've ever seen was the DYDX one. Now, for those who don't know, DYDX was the precursor to like GMX, which was the precursor to Hyperliquid, and we know what Hyperliquid is putting out right now. But GMX gave out an obscene amount of money in airdrop incentives over a year period, where people were like, I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars some accounts got for trading on their platform. And then even like 1inch, which was like the big DEX aggregator, they were giving out like 20K, like per airdrop. And then the original Uniswap airdrop was quite valuable as well. So there's been some monsters from back in the day. And I know that the Cosmos ecosystem, their whole narrative was that if you staked the Atom token, you just got airdrops from all the new chains when they dropped. So rather than committing to like a parachain like what we did, they were just given airdrops from every new chain that came out. So like, you can see how these things have like bootstrapped ecosystems. So like, hats off to the hydration guys. I know that it like did ruffle feathers and the community was split on it, but I think in the long run, this is one of those things that will only be a net positive for the Polkadot ecosystem.
Yeah. And hopefully this liquidity and all the issues that people talk about, the users and stuff, that kind of gets solved as well. Because, at the moment, especially from startup, like Kylix Finance, for example, from startup point of view, it's so hard to raise money and, Polkadot ecosystem, because, VCs are not keen to invest in things. So hopefully when this kind of, puts out a better sort of image outside, then it becomes easier. I think Mandala was lucky enough to get funding from the Treasury for Polkadot OpenGov. I'm not sure if Kylix will ever go down that route again, but yeah, well done for that.
Well, I on our Republic Labs Twitter this week, we started a new trend, which we're calling Polkadot Next Gen. And I actually have these 3 projects included, a little biased because obviously I'm part of one of them. But I think what Hyperbridge is doing, what Accurust is doing, and then obviously Mandala, Kylix, and I included I'm having a mental blank, Excavate right now, as like the kind of the big 5 projects I think that are coming, that is like next gen Polkadot. And you can see that these are like all very hard hitting projects led by what like Sean's doing over at Hyperbridge. I think this is like some revolutionary tech that won't be seen anywhere else, and is something that I think we've all been hanging for. And the fact that like even a year ago at Decoded, you've got the CEO of Parity, Bjorn, pretty much saying that, like listing you by name and saying, this is what Polkadot's doing. By the way, there's this project. Like, that's how bullish everybody is on everything that Hyperbridge is doing. And I think like from a Mandala perspective, the reason why we were in this space in the first place, while we're trying to create a blockchain, is because we had a government, a nation state knock on our door and say, hey, we want to build on chain. How do we do this? And that's where we spun up this whole idea of having Mandala. And we've now had more than one like government knock on our door. So when this launches, we're looking for mainstream adoption. And I think Kylix is very self-explanatory why it's great. It's multi-chain, DeFi, Excavate, real-world assets. Accurus is really cool, like really cool tech. So I'm calling it next-gen Polkadot. And I think while we've had a couple of projects leave the ecosystem and there's been a lot of highlight that's gone on that, man, we've got some bangers coming to the ecosystem. So next gen Polkadot.
Yeah, when you talk about another government, are you able to give us the name? Like which government? Is it US, China? You know?
It is another neighboring country in the Asia Pacific region. Um, I'm not allowed to name them right yet because it hasn't been announced by their local government internally. But
Neighboring
yeah,
country, but Indonesia is an island. They don't have a neighbor. Well, they only they're surrounded by the sea.
they
Come on, you
still
have to
have
give
they
us
still have
something.
they still have other countries that are within the proximity of their country.
Okay. Because you know like between the sea there's Australia and you are from Australia, so do you think it could be Australia the next government?
Oh, I would love to have something coming out of Australia, and we're working on it. We actually did already have a collaboration with the Western Australian government, and Anta went and presented what we're doing down in Western Australia, and have worked pretty closely with the city of Perth. Um, but bringing it on chain is the next step, and obviously Australia is a pretty high regulatory environment, so that one's going to take a little bit more massaging. But there's work in progress in several different governments, and I look forward to the day where we can bring people on chain en masse, and they think, oh, what ecosystem are we in? They don't even realize because they're just using blockchain.
Yeah.
And turns out it's going to be Polkadot.
Sean, where do you think a lot of like mass number of users would come from? Do you think it will be retail, or do you think it'll be the governments, for example, what Mandala Chain is doing, or DeFi? Where do you think, like obviously we're still years down the line, and still we're still not where for example, we have millions of users and things. Where do you think like the breakthrough would be from? I know it's a very deep question, it's $1 million question, but like, what's your opinion on it?
Actually, I have the perfect answer for this, and it's also something that I considered as well. I've been in crypto now for 7 to 8 years. Back in like 2017, working at Parity, working on Ethereum back when it was still called ETH Core, and we didn't even know we needed to scale this stuff, right? We were just kind of like, this is cool tech, I guess. And of course, all of the product market fit that came after DeFi, NFTs, and all these different things. Of course, these things have all come and gone. There's been different ideas, but one thing that's really stayed has been finance and the impact that blockchains have on global finance, right? This disintermediation of trade relationships and trade settlements, making trade settlements more efficient. I think that the next step for blockchains to reach mass adoption is going to be stablecoins. So it's this hybrid of governments, financial institutions, and blockchains, right? There's this uh, I want to call it a love triangle, essentially, um, because like essentially what's going to happen is um, blockchains, or rather financial institutions, are going to realize that like blockchains present a new revenue stream for them with stablecoin issuance, right? Because if you issue stablecoins, then you essentially get to keep all of those real world assets into any like financial instrument of your choice, and you keep all the yields on that financial instrument, whether that's treasury bond, whether that's the indexes or ETFs or whatever. And um, governments are also going to realize that, well, actually, we would prefer if these assets were held in our local treasury bonds, right? It strengthens the financial government, the finances of the government, the ability to spend more and borrow more, and the users get the freedom of on-chain currency, right? On-chain currency that they can swap for anything and pay for anything anywhere in the world, and opens up trade relationships that were could have been previously actually inaccessible for them, right? So I think that's the next step. I've thought about this for a long time, and we're already actually seeing this play out. Like I was reading the Chainalysis report for last year, and they were like, Nigeria, my home country, is the number two in blockchain transactions. And why is that? I think I can tell you, I can give you some insight. Nigerians have recently lost access to dollar accounts. We call them domiciliary accounts. So they don't have access to dollars. They can't send their kids to school abroad. They can't buy things that they need for their factories or for their businesses, that would then allow them to actually generate any kind of revenue. They can't, spend on like services that would make their businesses, more efficient, like software services or even hardware services, right? And so all of these things have driven That's stablecoin adoption. Well, particularly in this case, adoption of foreign stablecoins. But if we introduce local stablecoins, then that number goes up dramatically, right? Because now every single person who has a bank account is also on chain. And I think at that point, the opportunities just become endless.
I couldn't agree more. I think stablecoin gives you that, like you say, like almost like financial freedom of like you don't have to go through heaps and barriers. You know, you can just literally swap for whatever, buy whatever, and stablecoin will be the market. This is why I think I don't know if you know, UK is also launching their own digital pound, which is great. You know, like if a established or developed country is doing this, then obviously everybody else will follow. And China is already talking about it. I think Dubai recently, you know, in UAE, they launched a intent basically that they want to bring their own stablecoin as well. So I think this market will get a lot more competitive than like retail and you know other projects. And then yeah, this is probably where like an average person would not literally doesn't need to know anything. They just know like one of their dollar or pounds or whatever is equal to you know this, and they don't need to know what else is going on. And eventually there will be people slowly catching up with the technology, and know, and then maybe mass adoption of crypto can come along. Michael, I think Michael's in Indonesia, Bali usually, and I think in Bali there is the same thing as you said, Sean. I think you can't pay in any other currency other than their local currency. Is that right, Michael? Something like this.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, which is ironically is interesting because there's a lot of ways that companies get around it. They have like point systems, like air miles, and so you can go and like pay for air miles and use air miles to pay for stuff, but you have to pay for those air miles with the local currency first. And so everyone's very familiar with like dealing in tokens, but they're like closed loop tokens inside a business ecosystem. Anyway, that's the last barrier to overcome, and I think that those dominoes fall. But they were very good in other areas, like they straight out the gate were none of this is securities. Like there's very clear regulation on it straight away. So we've been very lucky, and obviously they've asked to build applications on chain. But actually, if you didn't mind, I want to throw a question back to Sean because obviously Hyperbridge itself is doing something quite unique. And it's almost like, I don't know if you would refer to it this way, Sean, but like it's almost like taking what XCM did and connecting some of the different chains inside this ecosystem and coming up with a new standard to connect all EVM chains to Polkadot. Would that be a fair analysis, or is it deeper than that?
I mean, I would say XCM is more of an interface. It's not really a bridge. The bridge actually is Polkadot itself, right? So you might compare XCM as the interface to our ISMP interface, for sure. But I would say that Hyperbridge, yes, definitely extends the reach of applications cross-chain, right? Like it allows them to reach beyond the chains that they're currently on in the way that is the most secure that we know of, right? A lot of people they ask me, well, what's the difference between Hyperbridge and like Layer Zero? Well, the difference is like very simple. In order to compromise Layer Zero, well, you have to just compromise the Layer Zero company. But if you wanted to compromise Hyperbridge, you have to compromise Ethereum, the Ethereum network itself. You would have to compromise Ethereum's consensus. You would have to compromise the consensus of the chains that we're connecting, which have very high economic security that prevents these kinds of compromises from happening sort of in the first place, right? So I think as we bring more institutions on chain, as we bring more people on chain, I think there's not going to be any leeway for the security of the systems that people's livelihoods are going to depend on. So that's why we built Hyperbridge, right? We had this like thesis that yes, blockchains are here to stay, and how can we make that experience better? How can we make the security better? And here we are.
I love what you've done as well because you've almost taken like the first child of Gavin Wood being the Ethereum and ecosystem and EVM, because all other EVM chains are just trying to keep proximity to Ethereum,
Yep.
and kind of expanded it to the second child, the new and improved version. And so I do think it is a shame that that we kind of like had to walk away, like all Polkadot had to walk away from a lot of what had been built in Ethereum, because I think that, I mean, I cut my teeth in Ethereum. That's where I first started as well in 2017. That was where I made my first dollar inside, my first, profitable trade inside blockchain ecosystems. So I've got a lot of love for that ecosystem. When I came to build my own project, I chose to build it in Polkadot, but I'm by no means a hater on Ethereum. And I think it's great that we can be more interoperable with our Ethereum brothers and sisters over there. And that's thanks to what you're building. So I think this opens just a huge amount of doors. And for anyone who hasn't checked it out already, Hyperbridge is going to be the game changer here.
Nice.
Appreciate you, brother.
Michael is looking for a job at Hyperbridge.
If only I had time for that too. What I'm actually looking for is that we have every ambition at Mandala for Hyperbridge to be the native bridge that we onboard people to from the Ethereum ecosystem, because a lot of our community are all going to come from EVM chains. Originally in Indonesia, Binance chain was king, and we had huge user base in Binance chain here because ETH was too expensive. And then obviously Polygon got a huge bump, and then some of the ETH L2s. But yeah, Hyperbridge will be the official way that people onboard onto Mandala. And so obviously we're bullish because it's a tech stack that we've chosen to work with.
Yeah, Sean, we just come into the end. Do you wanna quickly just give everybody a shout out where can they find you? What's what to expect next, and what's on your roadmap?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I'm active on Twitter. I'm very, I'm known for my shit posts and
I quite
my
like your
very
Twitter post, by the
abrasive
way.
takes.
No, we love it. We keep them coming.
Some of the things that we're working on right now is enabling just general purpose ERC20 bridging between networks. Right now, we don't have that. We only have dots, and of course, a lot of people have complained that this is not is very limited. And of course, Hyperbridge can be so much more. It just needs applications to be built to do these things. And we've taken responsibility, and we're now building out some of these applications. We should expect something, either next month or in July for the launch of we call it the intense or cross-chain swaps. And I think that will, really bring Hyperbridge to the crypto masters, as it were, at least crypto natives, and get them to experience Hyperbridge for the first time. That's kind of what we're working on. And then once we have that application, then we can now have a reason or justification to expand out the underlying infrastructure, right? So connecting more networks so that we can have more networks where this application can live on and expand to. So this is kind of how we're thinking about it. There'll be no new networks in the short term until we have this application in place. We just continue to build and continue to build out all the necessary developer tooling that protocols that are integrating Hyperbridge will leverage. We should have our cross-chain explorer soon. Finally, we didn't have that before. Just quality of life improvements for developers. I'm a developer myself, and I want people who are building on Hyperbridge to feel as comfortable as possible, right, and not to have to do a lot of guessing as to what's happening behind the scenes.
Awesome. What about you, Michael? Do you want to give the same for Mandala?
Yeah, so I guess the main updates on our side is that the PBA is coming out to Indonesia. So, and obviously that happens around the same time that CoinVest is coming. So it's going to be a very exciting time around the August time in Indonesia specifically, and we're looking to welcoming a large part of the community out this way. Effectively, with the development, stay tuned, because all those that are wanting to deploy anything on Mandala, you'll be able to within the next week or two. So we're pretty excited. We'll have some big announcements as well coming soon. We have a non-Polkadot ecosystem project, which we are very close to onboarding into the Polkadot ecosystem with Mandala, like a household name. So something that we've been working on as well. So I know we've been very cryptic about a lot of the updates, but it's just because the BD effort and the BD team that we have is first class, and some of the deals that we have are quite complex, especially when you deal with government institutions and existing blockchain projects. But we're busy as ever, as active as ever, and there's a lot coming, that's for sure.
Are you planning to visit Bali, Sean, to CoinFest Asia?
Oh, I'd love to. I just need to figure out my visas first.
It's quite straightforward. Indonesia, this is, I know European and UK are a little bit difficult. Indonesia is quite straightforward. You should be able to. But I was there last year, and I would definitely recommend visiting Bali. It's definitely a good experience, 100%. And Michael's gonna, be our host, our tour guide.
It's true. We're gonna put on a show.
I look forward to it. I look forward to it.
Yeah, and same for Kylix as well, guys. So you can find us at kylix.finance. Our Telegram, Twitter, we're quite active there as well. Just like Michael said, I would love to give you loads of updates, but because of NDAs and when things are not really finalized, we don't want to make a premature announcement. But we do have a couple of really big partnerships announcing soon. So one thing they are depending on is we'll launch in our test node on Paseo in June. So our testnet will be live in June, and then once like testnet and everything's finalized, then we will be announcing the partnerships and potentially going live in August time, roughly. Depends on all like a lot of certain factors which are beyond our control. But yeah, you guys can find us on kylix.finance. If you have any questions, you can join our Telegram chat. Same for Mandala, same for Hyperbridge. Make sure you follow them. And yeah, thanks very much for your time, Sean.
Yeah, the same thing.
I'm looking forward to doing another one when we're sitting in Bali on a beach.
Oh, that'll be so fun. Yeah, no. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Bye, guys.